What's up, what's up, what's up? This is your man, the STL Stranger, Umar Lee. Here to briefly talk about the great contest coming up this weekend between Conor McGregor and Khabib. I'll try to be as brief as possible because there's a lot you can discuss with this. Obviously, stylistically, it's a great matchup. You have Conor McGregor, who's a devastating puncher, great striker, fantastic movement. You have Khabib, who's a punishing grappler who can get you to the ground and pound you out. So it's just, stylistically, it's a good matchup. From someone like me who's a huge boxing fan and comes from a wrestling background, I'm intrigued by both sides. Hearing Khabib is really going at it with Ed Ruth. Ed Ruth over in Bellator, Penn State, 3-time NCAA national champion, former freestyle world team member, and Conor's really taking this fight serious. It's a very intriguing matchup. But as a political guy, as a guy who loves history, I'm also intrigued by Dagestan versus Ireland. For those who don't know, Dagestan, where Khabib is from, is like, it's to the sport of wrestling what Texas is to American football. It's the breadbasket of world talent, with great talents, Sedulayev, Gadisov, Setiev, etc., coming out of Dagestan. And it's really the national sport of Dagestan, wrestling. And so it feeds into all these other combat sports in the North Caucasus, Dagestan, Chechnya, Ingushetia, South Ossetia, etc. But these regions are also politically challenging to Vladimir Putin, challenging to the Russian Federation, and they were challenging to the Soviet Union, who tremendously repressed those regions. And these areas have battled the Russian Empire with leaders like Madame Shamil. They do not see themselves as Russians. They are not ethnically Russians. Russian is not their native language. They are Muslim, whereas most Russians are Russian Orthodox. They were persecuted because of their Islamic faith during the time of the Soviet Union, which was hostile to all religions. And so this fighting culture, this militant culture, this rebel culture of Dagestan and Chechnya has been honed over centuries as Muslims living within a mighty Russian Orthodox, later communist, now Russian Orthodox again, empire. As people living under rule that they didn't necessarily want to live under, and now have an uneasy relationship living under the Russians. And this reminds me of another place, Ireland, who were occupied, invaded, raped, and pillaged by the English Empire for centuries, and fought for the freedom for centuries. And you see Conor McGregor, when he comes out to the ring, he comes out to the ring to the, Sinead O'Connor, singing the Foggy Dew, a war song about the Easter Rising. A very powerful war song. So Conor has developed this image as somewhat of an Irish rebel by playing Irish rebel music, retweeting retweeting some things that were Republican in nature, not Republican in American politics, but Republican as in wanting the reunification of all of Ireland. So really, Dagestan and Ireland, you got different religions in Islam and Catholicism. They're not that different. They're both small places that have lived under the dominations of mighty empires, practicing a religion different from that of the mighty empire. Now, of course, when you get into the details, they're a little different. The Irish love their drink, and the devout Muslims like Khabib do not like their drink, as we saw in the original press conference. So, they're not all the same. But Ireland and Dagestan do have a lot of similarities. And I think that almost drawing on the intimacy of these similarities, Conor got under the skin of Khabib. So now Khabib is coming back with, "Where's your language? Why you don't speak your language?" And saying that Christopher McGregor, the grandfather of Conor, served in the British Navy or military in some capacity. First of all, some people do speak Irish, particularly in rural Ireland. It is taught in the schools. Conor can speak a little bit, as there are some interviews out there on YouTube. Not much, just like most Irish that grew up in Dublin, big cities can't. But not speaking their language is a product of occupation by a mighty empire. Not a product of choice. And that's why, as the Irish Republican movement grew, learning and teaching Irish became part of the cultural ethos of the Republican movement. And it's similar in other places that the Russians and Soviets dominated in Muslim countries. Now, Dagestan and Chechnya, they persevered and fiercely held on to their religion. But there are other places, like you go to Uzbekistan or Hungary or Bulgaria, where the rule of communism, the yoke of communist rule, eroded the religiosity, the religious practice of the people. Societies where all the women were in veils or in hijab, where they virtually disappeared, where people many times forgot how to pray. When the Bosnian refugees came to my hometown of St. Louis, the grown men were saying, "We don't know how to pray. We grew up under communism." They're taking their children to the mosque and saying, "Teach them how to pray." We did not have that luxury growing up under communism. We want this for our children. So, again, they're going at each other, trying to get each other's skin, trying to hype the fight. But again, it highlights some similarities. The difficult living under these mighty empires. But when they enter the cage on Saturday night in Las Vegas, it's not going to be about Ireland versus Dagestan. It's going to be about Conor McGregor versus Khabib. And I'm sorry, Khabib, I can't pronounce your last name. In the octagon. And most people are saying Khabib gets starched early, or Khabib takes down Conor and just punishes him, pounds him. I can honestly see it going both ways. My pick is Conor McGregor, but I could very easily see Khabib winning. This is like a pick and fight, 50-50. I really have no strong opinion either way. It's just a great matchup, and I think combat sports fans win either way. I appreciate both guys. I definitely appreciate what Dagestanis have done with the sport of wrestling. I'm looking forward to seeing the rematch of Kyle Snyder and Sedulayev at the World Championships in Budapest. And I definitely appreciate Conor McGregor, who's got the mic game like Ric Flair, has hyped it up like Ric Flair, like Dusty Rhodes. The mic game will take you a long way, and the skills pay the bills. And I'm really looking forward to this Saturday. All MMA fans win. My pick would be Conor. But I challenge people to look into the history of Dagestan and of Ireland and see how they were dominated by these mighty empires. And they have more in common than you might think. One may like his whiskey. One may like his tea. But at the end of the day, they have some shared humanity. Peace.